everyone, and thank you so much for tuning into ChasingCinema.com's official YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, Jacob Tiranno. It is Monday, guys. Just came back from a long vacation in California, so I'm a little bit tired, a little bit maybe not as high energy as I'd like to be today. But how could I be when I'm talking about my Week 20, the Week 20 365-day movie challenge, which is known as Hell Week. Hell Week, if you didn't follow last week, you can check it out up here, that white eye, click it, a bunch of links will drop down, you'll be able to see all my past week updates as well as my new reviews on the Angry Birds movie, The Nice Guys, as well as Neighbors 2. Now, Hell's Week is what I decided to call this week when I decided, for some reason, some stupid reason, that it would be a good idea to go out and watch 7 days of some of the worst films in cinematic history. That's right, I decided to look for 0%ers on Rotten Tomatoes, lists that critics and movie lovers have claimed the worst films of all time. And let me tell you, it was quite a week. I'll start off right away with day 134, in which I watched the 2011 film Happy Madison, the 2011 Happy Madison film. All right, let's start over. 2011 Happy Madison film, Bucky Larson, Born to be a Star. Now this film has 0% in Rotten Tomatoes, and that's really hard to achieve. There's not many of them out there. Like, yeah, the number's high, but I mean, out of all the movies in the world, it's a very interesting group. And now, after seeing it, I know why. They do not have a joke that lands because it's uncreative and, quite frankly, it's lazy writing in this movie. The film follows Nick Swartzen's character, who finds out his parents were adult film stars and goes off to Hollywood to fulfill his dream of being a star. It didn't have me like shaking my fists in anger because it was that bad, right? Like, it wasn't offensively bad. I mean, the movie is very explicit and very sexual and all that stuff. It just was really bad. Like, it just was not interesting. It wasn't entertaining. Like, I couldn't find something to keep me watching. It was just very boring. Like, I just had no interest in what I was watching. It just feels like it was like a 2-minute sketch Nick Swartzen had come up with during his time during stand-up or hanging out with Adam Sandler and the gang, and they were like, we should make a whole movie about that guy. And that was pretty much about it. Like, I really didn't have much feeling. I don't know, to see all the films that I've seen, it's really interesting to see what is labeled as 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. Like, does that movie deserve a 0%? I mean, it's really hard in my imagination to really earn a 0%, to like really give me nothing, to really, really hate it. Going on this challenge, I also thought of one thing, keeping one thing in mind, and that was, could I find a movie that I hated more than Dirty Grandpa? If you've never seen my review for Dirty Grandpa, I'd make sure to check it out because I hated that movie. Hated that movie. Quoting Roger Ebert, I hated that movie. Hated that movie. I honestly think that was the worst film I've ever seen. Starring Zac Efron and Robert De Niro. Yeah, Robert De Niro isn't the worst film I've ever seen in my life. It's a really sad thing to say, but it's true. And Bucky Larson, Born to be a Star, was pretty awful. Didn't upset me, though, like Dirty Grandpa did. But moving on. In Hell Week, I watched another film that I've heard a lot of bad things about, but had never myself watched. And that was The Last Airbender from M. Night Shyamalan. And what's interesting is that I never had no interest in watching the movie because I never watched the show. However, about 2 years ago, I watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I love the show. I mean, the show is genuinely great animation. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of heart in that series, and I think more people should watch it. So going into this, though, I was like, I can't be upset, because we just talked about this, right? I can't be upset at this movie for trying to be something different or taking a different direction. Like, when I was talking to people, they said, oh, it's a lot of, they mispronounce the characters' names, or they say things differently, or they take out this and that. And that's not necessarily a good reason to hate the movie because it's different than the television show. As long as the movie's bad, then it'll be bad. But if the movie's good and it's different, that's not necessarily a reason to attack it. But not surprised in saying that The Last Airbender is a real disaster. People have been saying it since the film's release, and as much as I would like to say it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. They're right. It is really, really bad. It's a mess, and it's so unclear, and the movie is so crammed full of material. I mean, this one movie takes on the entire season 1, or book 1, which is called Water. And it is so hard to sift through everything. I know this character's story, and even I was confused in like where we were going and who we were visiting and what was happening. It has some unbearable dialogue and really weak performances. And worst of all, those special effects were not good. Like, watching this, I would expect the one thing to be was the special effects. I just didn't buy the world that they created. It definitely gives fans more than 100 reasons to hate this show. But even if I take the show way out of my mind, I've never seen it, this film really is just plain bad. Yeah, wow, that was a rough one. And yeah, like at this point, I'm like, wow, Hell's Week's gonna be a lot harder than I thought. It was kind of like not fun anymore. And then we moved on to day 136, where I watched a very interesting movie. Probably the first movie of the week where I was like, you know what? Maybe it's not all bad, right? I watched a film from 1996 called The Island of Dr. Moreau. Now, The Island of Dr. Moreau is a very well-known movie because of its disastrous production stories. Paul Stanley. No, that's not his name. Is it his name? The director's Stanley. I don't know if it's Paul Stanley or not. Let me check. Basically, the movie stars Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer and tells this very outrageous story that has to deal with a person going to an island and discovering a mad scientist, Richard Stanley. Paul Stanley, yeah, you're just like, oh, it's the Kiss person. He's from Kiss. I know, I'm sorry. But Richard Stanley was a part of this movie for many, many years before, and then like fired 3 days on set. And the movie just has plenty of production stories of like disaster. They actually made a documentary on this movie called that's on Netflix. I believe it's called Lost Souls. It's like the crazy story about the island of Dr. Moreau. And actually, that's actually going to tie into next week, because next week, which is starting today, actually, if you follow me on Twitter and Instagram right here, you'll know that. But I'm actually going to be watching movies about other movies. So I'm pretty much watching documentaries that really focus on one particular movie. And I'll be watching that movie about Dr. Island of Moreau. But anyway, let's get back to that. But the movie was known to be panned by critics and absolutely hated and just had a lot of issues. And I don't think it's as bad as everyone said, right? Like, it's a seriously unfocused and jumbled movie, but you could tell that was bound to happen with all the creative minds involved. But I think there's potential in it. Like, if you watch it face value, it has some outrageous makeup and effects, and like those are really hard to ignore, and the characters don't make much sense. Like, it's a very just like blended movie, but overall you're just kind of like, you could be interested in it, right? Like, it wasn't a movie that I was like punching myself, staying awake. It was a movie that I was like, oh, okay, this is like, weird and out there. I think this movie doesn't have 0% Rotten Tomatoes, but like I said, it is famously known for the chaos and craziness of it. But I definitely don't think this was the worst of the worst. Like, this was one that I didn't mind watching, and I actually would recommend it to people because I think it's so weird and out there. Like, it's a fun, weird, and out there. It doesn't have any performances going for it either. Yeah, Marlon Brando's in this movie. He's not good in it. Like, no one's really good in this. But there is something interesting about it. And like I said, it's a movie I'd recommend because it's a unique experience. And it's not the best experience, but it's definitely unique. And I think it's all you need to watch it. It's really out there, and it struggles to make sense. But I've seen much worse. This is better than the other three that we talked about already. So, our other two out there, but give it a watch. Check it out. Dr. Island, the Island of Dr. Moreau. Day 137, I continue Hell Week with a movie that, like, I feel I have seen everywhere I've gone. Like, this movie just appears everywhere I go. Not literally seeing the movie, but like the DVD, the poster. And that is of the 2000 film Battlefield Earth. Battlefield Earth stars John Travolta and follows this alien race named the Cyclos who've come to Earth and it's all about planet extermination, all this crazy stuff. This post-apocalyptic movie. Sam Pepper, Forrest Whitaker is also in the film, and it is one of those films that you just can't help but shake your head at and say, what were they thinking? Like, what is happening here? Like, you watch it and you're like, oh, I could see this being, a movie they made, in 1980 maybe, but because the effects and everything are just so dated. And, it's like they don't even try to really create this really effective science fiction world. I mean, the biggest issue of the film is the bad dialogue and the campy. It's not the bad dialogue and the campy sci-fi effects. The biggest problem is the story. The story is just so boggling and frustrating. I mean, it's the most annoying element of the entire film. And this movie's famously awful. John Travolta, I think the movie has 2% on Rotten Tomatoes. And it has terrific talent. John Travolta, Forrest Whitaker, Sam Pepper, and no one is able to give out a solid performance. It is just all bad. I mean, John Travolta, he's acting in a completely different movie. I don't think he got the same script as everyone else because he's campy and he hams it up and he's all perky and it never fits together. And like I said, the best, these types of movies, the best thing they should have going for them at least is the special effects. And no, not at all. It is just campy nonsense all around. And it doesn't help. I mean, yikes. That's honestly, yikes. Wow. Day 138. Another 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. And another movie that I feel like is very commonly seen on DVD racks and DVD shelves. And now I know why. Because they don't sell. This is the 0%er on Rotten Tomatoes known as Ballistic X vs. Server, starring Lucy Liu and Antonio Banderas. And this was one of the most bloated, overstuffed, and overcomplicated films I think I've ever seen. It is just mindless action. And it's not even really good action. It's just scene after scene, explosion after explosion. It's a film about explosions, and explosions that you don't care to watch. It couldn't even be saved by the talent. Lucy Liu, great. Antonio Banderas, I love Antonio Banderas. And they did nothing for this movie. It is truly a huge mess. I mean, again, not offensively bad. I wasn't screaming in anger, but it was so empty, and it was just such a waste of time. This is one of those movies where I know why it's considered the worst film of all time, because it doesn't even evoke a strong emotion in me, because I don't care about it enough. It's just that bad, where it's I don't even bother investing my time or getting upset or being intrigued by this movie. I mean, this movie was just sloppy. Nobody's business. I mean, really, really bad. I hated this movie. Now here's where things get interesting. Day 139. I watched the 1990 horror film recognized for being so atrocious and considerably one of the worst films ever made, Troll 2. Now, Troll 2 was a film that I could not hate. Yes, the film it's arguably one of the worst movie, if not the worst movie ever made, is so bad it's good. It is like a horrible train wreck that you just can't turn away from. I was glued to the screen. I just found so much fascinating stuff to it. I mean, it has bad special effects. It has a dreadful script. But nothing could top the horrendous performances of this film. I mean, I was in awe that this movie, just how bad the performances were in this movie. I mean, it's atrocious. It's awful. But it's just one of those movies that's so atrocious and so crazy that you just can't help it for the mess that it is. I know I'm saying the words mess and disaster so often, and this is one where I'm like, it worked, kind of. I mean, I'm sure you already know Troll 2 is not a movie that is hated in by everyone. It actually has found a cult following. I mean, the Alamo Drafthouse has screened Troll 2, and they've had many screenings across the nation with the actors and recreating roles. They actually made a movie about it called Worst Best Movie Ever, or Best Worst Movie Ever, a Best Worst Movie Ever, or vice versa. And just because people have fallen in love with this movie, they went back and found this movie that is so bad that there's good in it. And I agree with them. I think that this movie's entertaining. This is a movie I want to own so I could show people this movie. Like, can you like just watch it? It's fun. Like, I watched it in my hotel room. I was staying. Me and a bunch of friends went down to California, and I had my friends hooked on it. They were like, "What is this?" And they were just hooked. And that's amazing that a horrible movie can do that. You know, but that horrible movie evoked an emotion not of anger or not of hate, but of just interest, of the oddity of it. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, I wouldn't say it's like a great movie. It's a bad movie. You know, I mean, a lot of fans don't even want to say it's bad, but I mean, this movie is a bad film. But it's a film that does evoke an emotion that's not negative. I don't know. And finally, I concluded this week with another film that is arguably one of the worst films ever, that many people call the worst film ever. And that was the film, and now also a cult classic from 2003, called The Room. And The Room is another film I was in awe of. I was just like, wow. Wow. The awkwardness, the awful acting and writing, it's terrible, but again, I didn't hate it. It's nowhere near as good as Troll 2. Well, it's nowhere near as entertaining as Troll 2. I wouldn't say good. In that the film is so bad that it's entertaining because of its flaws. I wouldn't probably buy The Room and show people like I would Troll 2. But again, like, I could see why people attach this movie, because it's so weird and it doesn't make sense, and the characters are strange, and you know, like, it's so funny. Like, in the movie, every time a character enters, it's like, oh hey George, oh hey Harry, oh hey Peter, oh hey Mike, and it just becomes like so repetitive. I mean, that's the kind of stuff we're dealing with. It's a horrible movie, but it was kind of entertaining. You're like, what is this? Like, you know, you're just kind of like, I'm interested in what's going on here. I didn't feel like I wasted my time, and that's pretty shocking, especially with the things that I've seen this week. I even posted a little clip of it on my Twitter account right here, because like I can't even put into words like why it's so weird and why it's so bad. I mean, it deserves a watch if you're a fan of if things that go wrong. If you could watch movies that are bad and see some good in them, or you could handle a movie that has a low budget and might not be a fantastic movie, then I'd say check it out. If you're a person who only can watch good stuff or only watches stuff of high quality, skip it. No one's begging you to see this. But I had to say, the last two, and Dr. Monroe weren't as bad as I particularly thought. I would actually say I enjoyed Troll 2. So, I mean, for that alone, I think that was a good experience. Hell Week is over, and I've watched some of the worst films in cinematic history. Like, some of the films that are ranked the worst films of all time. And none of them could touch Dirty Grandpa, though, with a 10-foot pole. And that's in all seriousness. I hated that movie. That movie upset me as a movie fan and a movie lover. And none of these films did that. Some of them bored me, or I didn't care. You know, and I think that they're all bad on different circumstances, but I hated Dirty Grandpa. I don't think any of the films that I watched this week even got me close to the hate that I hated that movie with. And I know that just seems like I'm just really targeting this movie, and I guess I am, because I really did not like that movie. And I try my best to kind of let it go, but I can't. So hopefully I'll be able to one day make peace with that. But anyway, that's for another discussion. Today, I start week 21, which theme, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be watching movies about other movies. So, for instance, a lot of documentaries on films that are already released. For instance, a documentary on the Dr. Monroe. That film called The Best Worst Movie Ever about Trolls 2. I'll be watching all of those and reporting that to you next week. If you've not seen our reviews from the past week, like I mentioned earlier, Angry Birds, Nice Guys, X-Men, Apocalypse, Neighbors 2, or my last week's update, make sure to check those videos out ASAP, right here on that white dot up there. As well, make sure to check out my ultimatum acceptance from Jeffrey K. Howard, also known as Vegas Film Critic. He challenged me. If you haven't checked out his channel, make sure to do that. You can see his challenge for mine and my acceptance, again, right up here on the white dot. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to today on Chasing Cinema's YouTube channel. Of course, my name is Jake Tiranno. I want you to do me a favor and comment. Let me know how you feel about these movies. I'm sure a lot of you guys really have seen these movies. And I want to hear what you guys have to say, or if you have any recommendations or anything you think I should try, let me know down here in the comment section below. If you've enjoyed this video, slap a like on it. Let me know you appreciate it. And the best way to never miss any of our reviews or movie updates is to hit that subscribe button. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. My name is Jacob Tiranno, and please continue chasing cinema.